The notification on my phone buzzed. Chen Ventures stock hits $847 per share. New record high. I quickly silenced it and shoved the phone back into my apron pocket. Nobody at Grind Coffee knew that the C in that stock ticker was my last name. Hey loser. Victoria Sterling's voice cut through the morning chatter like a knife. I said no foam. Are you deaf or just stupid? I looked up at the woman in the $1,000 Hermes suit, her face twisted with disgust as she glared at the latte I'd just made. Behind her, a crowd of tech brothers snickered, their phones already out and recording. I'm sorry, ma'am. I can remake that for you. Don't you ma'am me? She slammed the cup down, splashing coffee across the counter. Do you know who I am? I'm Victoria Sterling, Senior VP at Nexus Tech. I make more money in 1 hour than you make in a month, you pathetic minimum wage peasant. The crowd was growing. Someone whispered, oh my god, she's going viral again. Victoria had a reputation for these public meltdowns. There were compilation videos of her screaming at service workers all over social media. I want to speak to your manager. Now, she shrieked. He's not in today, I said calmly, wiping up the spilled coffee. Then call the owner. I'm going to make sure you're fired and blacklisted from every coffee shop in the Bay Area. People like you need to learn your place. The crowd was eating this up. Phones were recording from every angle. I could see the live stream starting on Instagram. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, let me call him right now. I dialed my own number, letting it ring twice before hanging up. Sorry, straight to voicemail. But I can give you his business card. Victoria's eyes lit up with malicious glee. Perfect. I'm going to personally destroy your pathetic little career. I reached under the counter and pulled out a matte black business card, the kind that cost more than Victoria's monthly car payment. I handed it to her with a slight bow. Here you go. She snatched it without looking, already turning to address her audience. See this, everyone? This is what happens when entitled millennials think they can give attitude to their betters. I'm about to teach this loser a lesson in respect. She finally glanced down at the card. Her face went white. What is this? The owner's business card, like you asked. Victoria's hand started shaking as she read aloud. Alex Chen, founder and CEO, Chen Ventures. Owner of Cloud9 Solutions, Quantum Dynamics, and 57 other companies. The cafe exploded in gasps and murmurs. Someone screamed, oh my god, that's the Alex Chen. But Victoria wasn't done. Even faced with the evidence, she doubled down. This is fake, she shrieked, waving the card. This is obviously a fake business card. You probably printed this at Kinko's. The crowd started laughing, but not with her, at her. Ma'am, I said quietly, would you like me to verify my identity? Yes, prove it, because there's no way in hell that the Alex Chen would be working as a barista. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, tilting the screen toward her. The balance showed 9 digits. Victoria stared at it, her mouth hanging open. That's photoshopped. Would you like me to call my assistant? She can verify who I am. Your assistant? Victoria laughed hysterically. Right, like you have an assistant. I speed dialed a number. Hi, Sarah. Yes, I'm at the University Avenue location. Could you please verify my identity for someone? Yes, I'll put you on speaker. Alex Chen, CEO of Chen Ventures, came the crisp voice through the phone. How can I help you? The crowd was dead silent now, everyone staring at Victoria, who was still shaking her head in denial. This is all fake, she screamed. This is some elaborate prank. There's no way. Victoria, I said calmly, I believe you mentioned that you work at Nexus Tech? Yes, Senior VP, Sarah, could you please check our investment portfolio? I believe we own about 37% of Nexus Tech. That's correct, Alex. Actually, the board meeting is next week. You were planning to attend virtually. Victoria's face went through every shade of red before settling on purple. This isn't real. This can't be real. Victoria Sterling, Senior VP of Marketing, I continued. Hired 3 years ago. Salary, $340,000 annually. Currently under investigation by HR for hostile workplace behavior. Should I continue? The crowd was absolutely losing it now. Phones were recording from every angle. Someone shouted, she's getting roasted by her own company's owner. But Victoria still wouldn't give up. I don't believe you. This is all fake. You're just some loser barista trying to go viral. That's when the door chimed, and Marcus Webb, CEO of Nexus Tech, walked in with 2 assistants. Victoria, he said, his voice deadly calm, what exactly are you doing? Marcus, Victoria spun around, relief flooding her face. Thank God you're here. This fake barista is pretending to be Alex Chen and trying to humiliate me. Marcus looked at me, then at Victoria, then back at me. Mr. Chen, I am so sorry. I came as soon as I saw the live stream. Victoria's face went blank. What did you just call him? This is Alex Chen, Victoria. The Alex Chen. owner of Chen Ventures, our primary investor, and Marcus paused, his face grim. Your boss's boss's boss. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria did something that made the crowd gasp in unison. She laughed. You're all in on this. This is some kind of conspiracy to make me look bad. That's when I'd had enough. I pulled out my phone and made one more call. Security, this is Alex Chen. I need you to remove someone from my coffee shop. Yes, the University Avenue location, the one I own. 2 security guards appeared within minutes. As they escorted a still protesting Victoria out, she was screaming at the top of her lungs. This is all fake. You'll see, I'm going to expose this fraud. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Marcus approached the counter, his face pale with embarrassment. Mr. Chen, I cannot apologize enough for... Don't, I said, untying my apron. We'll discuss this later. Right now, I have a company to run. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard someone in the crowd say, did that really just happen? The answer was yes. And it was about to get so much worse for Victoria Sterling. Breaking. Tech. Executive humiliates barista, discovers he's her boss's boss. Video goes viral. The headline was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Victoria Sterling's meltdown had become the internet's favorite disaster. The hashtag BaristaGate was trending worldwide. But sitting in my actual office at Chen Ventures, the 47th floor of the building with my name on it, I was reading something even more entertaining. Victoria's response. She'd posted a 47-tweet thread at 3 a.m. I'm being targeted by a massive conspiracy. The man claiming to be Alex Chen is an imposter. I've done my research, and the real Alex Chen is currently in meetings in New York. This barista is a paid actor trying to destroy my reputation. I have proof. Her proof was a blurry photo of someone walking into a building in Manhattan, claiming it was me. The person was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses and could have been literally anyone. My assistant, Sarah Kim, walked in with a stack of papers. Alex, we've got a problem. Victoria Sterling is doubling down. She's claiming you're a fraud and demanding Nexus Tech investigate. What did Marcus Webb say? That's the problem. He's backing her up. I looked up from my laptop. What? Sarah set down a printed email. Marcus sent this to his board this morning. He's claiming that his company is being targeted by corporate espionage and that someone is impersonating you to destabilize Nexus Tech. I read the email in disbelief. Marcus, who had personally seen me, who had called me Mr. Chen in front of witnesses, was now claiming I was a fake. This is insane, I muttered. It gets worse. They're demanding that Chen Ventures provide proof of your identity and whereabouts for the past 3 years. I laughed. They want proof that I'm myself? They're claiming that the real Alex Chen would never work as a barista, and that this is obviously an elaborate hoax designed to manipulate their stock price. My phone buzzed with a text from my head of security. Mr. Chen, there are protesters outside the building. They're demanding you prove you're not a fraud. I walked to the window and looked down. Sure enough, there was a crowd of people holding signs. Fake Alex Chen and barista fraud, and investigate the conspiracy. Sarah, I said, set up a press conference. Today, 2 p.m. Are you sure that's wise? This could blow over. No, it won't. They want proof? I'll give them proof. At 2 p.m., the Chen Ventures auditorium was packed with reporters, employees, and curiosity seekers. I walked to the podium in a simple black suit, the same one I'd worn to my first board meeting 15 years ago. Thank you all for coming, I began. I'm here to address the allegations that I am somehow not Alex Chen, founder and CEO of Chen Ventures. A reporter from TechCrunch raised her hand. Mr. Chen, or whoever you are, can you explain why you've been working as a barista for 3 years? I've been conducting a personal experiment in understanding how my business decisions affect workers at all levels of the economy. But isn't it suspicious that you're only revealing this now, after being confronted by Victoria Sterling? I've never hidden my identity. I simply haven't advertised it. Another reporter stood up. Victoria Sterling claims you're a paid actor. She says the real Alex Chen is in New York. How do you respond? I smiled. I respond by inviting Ms. Sterling to join us. The auditorium doors opened, and Victoria Sterling walked in, flanked by 2 lawyers and Marcus Webb. She looked triumphant. Thank you for coming, Victoria, I said. I understand you have some concerns about my identity. Victoria strode to the microphone set up for questions. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is a fraud. I've spent the last 48 hours investigating, and I can prove that he is not Alex Chen. The crowd murmured with anticipation. First, Victoria continued, the real Alex Chen is 6 feet tall. This man is clearly only 5'11". I blinked. I'm 5'11 3/4. Second, Alex Chen graduated from Stanford with a degree in computer science. I contacted Stanford, and they have no record of this man attending their university. Because I went by Alexander Chen in college, not Alex. Third, and most importantly, Victoria's voice rose dramatically, I have a witness who saw the real Alex Chen in New York yesterday at the same time this imposter was supposedly at the coffee shop. She gestured to Marcus Webb, who stepped forward. I can confirm that Alex Chen was in a video conference with our board yesterday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The room erupted in confused murmurs. I felt a grin spreading across my face. Marcus, I said, what's the name of your company's primary investor? Chen Ventures. And who owns Chen Ventures? Alex Chen. And who was in that video conference with your board? Marcus hesitated. Alex Chen. And who am I? Marcus was clearly struggling. You're claiming to be Alex Chen. Marcus, I am Alex Chen. I was in that video conference. From my office, while also working at the coffee shop. Victoria jumped back to the microphone. That's impossible. Nobody can be in two places at once. You're right, I said. I wasn't in two places at once. I was in one place, my office. The video conference was at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific. I worked my shift at the coffee shop from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., then came here for the meeting. The crowd was trying to process this timeline. Victoria looked confused. But that would mean you threw a tantrum at me 3 hours after I'd been in a meeting with your boss, discussing whether to fire you for exactly this kind of behavior. Victoria's face went white. No, that's not. This is still fake. Even if the timeline works, that doesn't prove anything. Victoria, I said calmly, would you like me to call your parents? My parents? What do my parents have to do with this? Because I've been sending them a Christmas card every year for the past 5 years, thanking them for raising such a dedicated employee. Victoria's jaw dropped. You don't know my parents. Richard and Helen Sterling, retired teachers from Sacramento. They're very proud of your career, by the way. They've been showing your company headshots to their neighbors. The crowd was absolutely silent now. Victoria was staring at me like I'd just performed actual magic. How do you know that? She whispered. Because I make it my business to know about the people who work for companies I invest in, especially the ones who might be problems. Marcus stepped forward. Victoria, I think we need to... No, Victoria screamed, causing everyone to jump. This is all fake. Even if he knows personal information, that doesn't prove he's Alex Chen. He could have hired a private investigator. I pulled out my phone. Sarah, could you come down here, please? My assistant appeared on stage within minutes. Sarah, could you please tell everyone how long you've worked for me? 15 years, Alex. Since you started Chen Ventures. Victoria whirled around. You're part of the conspiracy. Victoria, I said, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you believe I am Alex Chen? She stared at me for a long moment, her face cycling through various expressions. Finally, she lifted her chin defiantly. No, I think you're a very convincing fraud, but I don't believe you're Alex Chen. Fair enough, I said. Then you won't mind if I fire you? Victoria laughed. You can't fire me, you're not Alex Chen. Marcus, I said, please fire Victoria Sterling, effective immediately. Marcus looked panicked. I can't just fire her because you said so. You can if I'm your primary investor and I'm telling you to fire her. But you're not Alex Chen, I sighed. Sarah, please transfer 51% of my Nexus Tech shares to my personal account, and then vote those shares to remove Marcus Webb as CEO. The crowd gasped. Victoria's face went through rapid changes as she processed what I'd just said. You can't do that, she whispered. I can if I'm Alex Chen. But you're not Alex Chen. Then how did I just buy controlling interest in your company? Victoria stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. Not normal laughter, the kind of hysterical laughter that comes right before a complete breakdown. This is all an elaborate dream, she announced to the crowd. I'm going to wake up and none of this will have happened. She pinched herself hard. I'm awake, she said, looking confused. Why am I still awake? That's when I realized Victoria Sterling wasn't just stubborn. She was having a complete psychological break from reality. And somehow, that made what I was about to do even more satisfying. Breaking. Victoria Sterling, hospitalized after public breakdown, claims reality is fake news. The headlines were getting weirder by the hour. Victoria had been admitted to a psychiatric facility after trying to convince the doctors that she was living in a simulation designed to make her look bad. But that wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I was back behind the counter at Grind Coffee, enjoying the last few days of my barista experiment, when Marcus Webb walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Alex, he said, approaching the counter cautiously, we need to talk. I'm working, I replied, not looking up from the espresso machine. My shift ends at 3 p.m. This is about Victoria. What about her? Marcus glanced around nervously. She's hiring a private investigator. To prove you're not real. I looked up at him. She's in a psychiatric facility. She checked herself out. Against medical advice. Marcus lowered his voice. She's convinced that you're part of an elaborate conspiracy to drive her insane. Just then, the cafe door burst open. Victoria Sterling walked in, but she looked completely different. Her hair was disheveled, she was wearing a rumpled tracksuit, and her eyes had a manic gleam. "I knew it," she shouted, pointing at me. "I knew you'd be here, you fake." The entire cafe went silent. Customers pulled out their phones, sensing another viral moment. "Victoria," I said calmly, "how are you feeling? Don't you patronize me. I've figured out your whole scheme." She pulled out a thick folder and slammed it on the counter. "I hired the best private investigator in the Bay Area, and he's found proof that you're not Alex Chen." "Really? What kind of proof?" Victoria opened the folder with trembling hands. "First, Alex Chen's birth certificate. Born in San Francisco, March 15, 1999. "That's correct." "But you were born in Oakland," she screamed triumphantly. "No, I was born in San Francisco. I grew up in Oakland." Victoria's face fell for a moment, then brightened again. "That's what you claim, but I have witnesses who saw you in Oakland as a child." "Because I lived there from age 3 to 18, but the birth certificate says San Francisco." "Because that's where I was born. Before we moved to Oakland." The crowd was watching this exchange like a tennis match. Victoria was clearly struggling to process the information. That's not, you're confusing me on purpose," she sputtered. "Victoria, being born in one place and growing up in another isn't unusual. But it proves you're lying about something." I handed a customer their lot, then turned back to Victoria. "What else does your investigation show?" "Alex Chen went to Lincoln Elementary School in Oakland. But I called the school and they said you never went there." "I went by Alexander Chen in elementary school." "Different name, different person." "Same person, different nickname." Victoria was getting more agitated. "But Alex Chen was in the chess club. You probably don't even know how to play chess." "I was captain of the chess club." "Prove it," I sighed and pulled out my phone. "Sarah, can you bring my chess trophies from the office?" "Yes, all of them." "No, I don't think it's weird." While we waited, Victoria continued her investigation. Alex Chen's first company was called ByteStream Analytics. "But according to my sources, you couldn't possibly have started that company." "Why not?" "Because you would have been only 19 years old. I was 19 when I started ByteStream Analytics." "That's impossible. Nobody starts a billion-dollar company at 19. Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook at 19. That's different." "How is it different?" Victoria stared at me blankly. Because you're not Mark Zuckerberg." The crowd was starting to laugh now. Not with Victoria, but at her increasingly desperate logic. Sarah arrived with a box of chess trophies. I pulled out the largest one, Lincoln Elementary Chess Champion, 2011 to 2015, Alexander Chen. Victoria grabbed the trophy and examined it closely. "This is fake. You had this made." "Victoria, you can call the school and verify." I did call the school. They said they don't have records of Alexander Chen. "Then call again and ask about Alex Chen." Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed. We all listened as she spoke to someone at the school. "Yes, I'm calling about Alex Chen." "What do you mean you need to know which Alex Chen? How many Alex Chens are there?" 17? "But I need the one who was in the chess club." She hung up looking defeated. "There were 17 Alex Chens at that school. And one of them was me." "But which one?" "The one who won the chess championship 4 years in a row." Victoria's investigation was falling apart, but she wasn't giving up. "I have one more piece of evidence." She pulled out a photograph. "This is Alex Chen at his Stanford graduation." I looked at the photo. It showed a young man in a cap and gown, but his face was turned away from the camera. "Victoria, you can't see the face in this photo." "Exactly, because it's not you. Or because it's a bad photo. If you're really Alex Chen, then you should have better graduation photos." I pulled out my phone and showed her my camera roll. It was full of graduation photos, including several clear shots of me in the same cap and gown. Victoria stared at the photos, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and desperation. "These are photoshopped," she whispered. "Victoria, these are from 2020. Photoshop technology wasn't that advanced. Everything is photoshopped. Everything is fake. This whole reality is fake." She started spinning around the cafe, pointing at random things. "This coffee shop is fake. These customers are fake. This whole world is designed to make me look crazy." The crowd was watching in stunned silence as Victoria Sterling had a complete psychotic break in real time. "Marcus," I said quietly, "I think you should call someone." But Marcus was backing toward the door. "I can't be here for this. If my board sees me on another viral video." "Marcus, she needs help. She needs to be fired is what she needs." You can't fire someone for having a mental health crisis. I can fire her for harassing you. That's when Victoria overheard. She whirled around, her eyes wild. You're firing me? You're firing me? Victoria, please calm down. I'm calm. I'm the only sane person here. She climbed onto a chair, then onto a table, addressing the crowd like she was giving a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing the greatest conspiracy in corporate history. This man is not Alex Chen. Alex Chen is a myth, a legend, a fictional character created by the financial media to manipulate stock prices. The crowd was recording every word. Someone whispered, "This is better than reality TV." The real Alex Chen, Victoria continued, is a collective of 12 different people who take turns being CEO. That's why nobody ever sees him. That's why he's so mysterious. Victoria, I called up to her, that's not how business works. ASNT, she screamed. How do we know anything is real? How do we know you're real? She pointed at a customer. Are you real? Are you? The customer nodded nervously. Prove it? I have a driver's license? Fake. All identification is fake. We're all living in a simulation. That's when I realized this had gone too far. Victoria Sterling wasn't just stubborn or in denial. She was having a complete break from reality. Victoria, I said gently, I'm going to call someone to help you. You can't help me. Nobody can help me. Because none of this is real. She jumped down from the table and ran toward the door. I'm going to expose this conspiracy. I'm going to prove that Alex Chen doesn't exist. She burst through the door and ran down the street, screaming about simulations and fake realities. The cafe was dead silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping, and soon the entire place was applauding. Best entertainment I've had all year, someone called out. But I wasn't laughing. I was watching Victoria Sterling run down the street, and I realized that sometimes winning isn't as satisfying as you think it's going to be. Marcus approached the counter. Alex, I'm sorry. I had no idea she was this unstable. Marcus, I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to make sure Victoria gets the help she needs. Medical help, financial help, whatever it takes. But she tried to destroy you. She tried to destroy a lie. The truth is, I could have ended this at any point. I chose to let it continue because I was curious how far she'd go. Marcus looked confused. So you're not angry? I'm disappointed. In myself, for letting this become entertainment. In you, for not protecting your employee. In all of us, for turning someone's mental health crisis into a viral video. I untied my apron and set it on the counter. My experiment is over. I'm going back to being a CEO full-time. What about the coffee shop? I'm promoting Jenny to manager. She's been ready for weeks. As I walked toward the door, Marcus called after me. Alex, what am I supposed to tell my board about all this? I paused. Tell them that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is admit you were wrong. And what about Victoria? Tell them that sometimes the most human thing you can do is show mercy. I walked out of Grind Coffee for the last time, leaving behind 3 years of steamed milk and pulled shots. But I was taking with me something more valuable than any business lesson, the knowledge that power without compassion is just cruelty with a better wardrobe. The next morning, I would start my real work. Not just running a company, but figuring out how to use that company to make sure no one else ever felt as lost and desperate as Victoria Sterling had looked, standing on that table, screaming about fake realities. Because sometimes, the most important business decision you can make is to remember that your employees are human beings first, and everything else second. Breaking. Victoria Sterling found living in car, claims Alex Chen stole my reality. The headline made my stomach turn. It had been 2 weeks since Victoria's breakdown at the cafe, and apparently, things had gotten much worse. I was in my corner office at Chen Ventures, reviewing quarterly reports, when my assistant Sarah knocked on the door. Alex, there's someone here to see you. She says it's about Victoria Sterling. A woman in her 50s walked in, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a worn handbag. Her eyes were red from crying. Mr. Chen, I'm Helen Sterling, Victoria's mother. I stood up immediately. Mrs. Sterling, please sit down. How can I help you? Helen sat across from my desk, clutching her handbag tightly. My daughter is living in her car. She's convinced that you're not real, that the whole world is conspiring against her. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is she getting help? She won't accept help. She says the doctors are part of the conspiracy. Helen's voice cracked. She thinks you've somehow stolen her reality. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Mrs. Sterling, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far. I know you didn't. I've been following the story online. Helen looked at me with sad eyes. Victoria has always been difficult. Even as a child, she couldn't accept when she was wrong. But this is different. This is my fault, I said quietly. No, it's not. Victoria made her own choices. But Mr. Chen, she's still my daughter, and I'm scared for her. I walked to the window looking out at the city below. What can I do to help? I don't know. Maybe if you talk to her. If you could somehow convince her that you're real? Mrs. Sterling, I'm not sure that's possible. Victoria has created an entire alternate reality where I don't exist. But you have to try, please. I looked at this mother, desperate to save her daughter, and I knew I had to do something. Okay, I'll try. 2 hours later, I was standing in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner in San Jose, looking at Victoria Sterling's car. It was a luxury BMW, but it was covered in handwritten signs. Alex Chen is fake, and wake up sheeple, and the simulation is real. Victoria was sitting in the driver's seat, typing furiously on a laptop. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I knocked on the window. She looked up, and her eyes went wide with terror. No, not you, you're not real. She started the car and tried to drive away, but I stepped in front of the vehicle. Victoria, please, we need to talk. Get away from me, demon. Victoria, I'm not a demon. I'm not fake, I'm Alex Chen, and I'm real. She turned off the car and rolled down the window just a crack. Prove it. How would you like me to prove it? Show me your birth certificate. Your real birth certificate, not the fake one. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of my birth certificate. She squinted at it through the window. That's photoshopped. Victoria, what would convince you that I'm real? Nothing, because you're not. You're a hologram, a deepfake, a simulation. Victoria, I'm standing right here. You can see me, you can hear me. How can I be a simulation? Because the technology exists, they can make fake people now. Who is they? The corporations, the government, the lizard people. I realized that Victoria had gone completely down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. She wasn't just denying my identity anymore, she was denying reality itself. Victoria, I want to help you. You can't help me, you don't exist. If I don't exist, then how can I help you? She paused, clearly struggling with the logic. Because? You're part of the simulation that's trying to break my mind. Victoria, what if I told you that I've been worried about you? That I've been trying to make sure you're okay? Lies, all lies. What if I told you that I've set up a fund to help you? To pay for therapy, medical bills, whatever you need? Victoria's face went through several emotions. You did what? I created a fund. The Victoria Sterling Recovery Fund. Your mother has access to it. That's impossible, you hate me. I don't hate you, Victoria. I'm concerned about you. But I was terrible to you. You were having a bad day. We all have bad days. Victoria stared at me through the window for a long moment. Are you really Alex Chen? Yes. And you're really real? Yes. And you don't hate me? No, I don't hate you. She started crying. Not the hysterical crying from before, but quiet, exhausted tears. I've been so scared, she whispered. I thought the whole world was fake. I thought I was losing my mind. Victoria, you're not losing your mind. You're having a hard time, but that's not the same thing. But I said such terrible things to you. People say terrible things when they're scared or upset. That doesn't make them bad people. Victoria unlocked her car door and stepped out. She looked fragile, like a strong wind could knock her over. I don't know how to come back from this, she said. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Victoria, 3 weeks ago, everyone thought I was just a barista. People's opinions can change. But I made such a fool of myself. So did I. Do you know how many people have called me crazy for working in a coffee shop when I could have been in a corner office? Victoria almost smiled. That is pretty crazy. The difference is, I had a choice. You didn't. You were struggling, and instead of helping you, I turned it into a game. You're apologizing to me? I'm apologizing to both of us. This whole thing spiraled out of control, and I should have stopped it sooner. Victoria looked around the parking lot, at her car covered in conspiracy theory signs. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it all at once, just one day at a time. Will you help me? Of course. That's when I realized something. Victoria Sterling wasn't my enemy. She was someone who had been struggling for a long time, and I had accidentally made it worse. But now, maybe I could help make it better. Victoria, I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? I want to offer you a job. Her mouth fell open. A job? With your company? Not with my company. For my company. I want to create a new division focused on employee mental health and wellness. I want you to run it. But I'm a mess. You're someone who understands what it's like to struggle. That makes you qualified, not disqualified. What if I mess up again? Then you'll learn from it and do better next time. That's how growth works. Victoria looked at me with something I hadn't seen from her before. Hope. Why would you do this for me? Because everyone deserves a second chance. Including you. And including me? Victoria, you never lost your first chance. You've just been too scared to take it. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. That's all anyone can ask. As we walked back toward her car to gather her things, Victoria turned to me. Alex, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really work as a barista for 3 years? I thought about the question. Because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be human. And did you? I'm starting to. 3 months later, Victoria Sterling was featured on the cover of Harvard Business Review, discussing her revolutionary approach to workplace mental health. The article was titled, From Breakdown to Breakthrough, How One Executive's Crisis Became a Company's Mission. In the article, she was quoted as saying, sometimes, the most important business skill you can develop is the ability to admit when you're wrong. And sometimes, the most important thing you can do for someone is help them find their way back to themselves. I framed that quote and hung it in my office. Not because Victoria said it, but because it was true. And because it reminded me that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do as a CEO is remember that your employees are human beings first, and everything else second. 1 year later, I was sitting in the same cafe where it all began, but everything had changed. The Grind Coffee on University Avenue now had a small plaque by the door. Chen Ventures Mental Health Initiative. Founded here, 2024. Victoria Sterling walked in, looking nothing like the woman who had screamed at me a year ago. She was wearing a simple gray suit, her hair was neat, and most importantly, her eyes were clear and focused. The usual? I asked, standing behind the counter. I'd been coming in once a week to work a shift, partly for nostalgia, and partly because I'd missed the simple satisfaction of making coffee. Actually, Victoria said, I'll have whatever you recommend. I started making her a lavender latte, something new we'd added to the menu. How was the conference in Austin? Incredible. 15 more companies signed up for the program. We're officially in all 50 states now. The Chen Ventures Mental Health Initiative had become something neither of us had expected. What started as a way to help Victoria recover had turned into a comprehensive program that was revolutionizing how companies approached employee wellness. Any interesting stories from the road? Victoria's face lit up. Actually, yes. There was this one CEO, reminded me a lot of, well, me from a year ago. He was convinced that mental health support was just coddling weak employees. What changed his mind? His daughter. She works for one of our partner companies, and she told him how the program had helped her deal with anxiety and depression. He broke down crying in the middle of my presentation. I handed her the latte. And now? Now he's implementing the most comprehensive mental health program I've ever seen. He wants to make sure no employee ever feels like they have to choose between their mental health and their job. We sat down at a corner table, the same one where Marcus Webb had once confronted me about Victoria's behavior. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Victoria, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret how we met? She was quiet for a moment, sipping her latte. You mean, do I regret having a public breakdown, living in my car, and becoming a viral meme? When you put it that way, it sounds pretty awful. It was awful. But Alex, it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. How do you figure? Because it forced me to confront who I had become. I was so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that I forgot about the people I was stepping on along the way. She set down her cup. Do you know what I realized when I was living in my car, convinced that reality was fake? What? That I had been living in a fake reality for years. I had created this version of myself that was successful and powerful, but it wasn't real. The real me was the scared, insecure person who needed to put others down to feel important. And now? Now I'm still scared and insecure sometimes, but I'm real. I'm authentically myself, flaws and all. Just then, Jenny walked over to our table. She was wearing a manager's name tag and looked completely in her element. Alex, Victoria, sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. A young man in his 20s approached our table. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, and he looked nervous. Mr. Chen? Miss Sterling? I'm David Kim. I work for TechFlow Solutions. I recognized the company name. It was one of the companies that had implemented Victoria's program. What can we do for you, David? I wanted to thank you, both of you. His voice was shaking slightly. 3 months ago, I was planning to kill myself. Victoria and I exchanged glances. This wasn't the first time someone had approached us with a story like this, but it never got easier to hear. I was working 80-hour weeks, sleeping at the office, and I felt like I was drowning. I thought about ending it all because I couldn't see any other way out. David, Victoria said gently, what changed? Your program. My company implemented it right before I was going to do something permanent. I started seeing the counselor. I learned about work-life balance, and most importantly, I realized that I wasn't alone. David pulled out his phone and showed us a photo. This is my daughter. She's 3 years old. Because of your program, she's going to have a father who's present in her life, not just physically present but emotionally present. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. David, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for choosing to stay. I wanted you to know that what you're doing isn't just changing companies. It's saving lives. After David left, Victoria and I sat in silence for a few minutes. This is why we do it, she said finally. Because of people like David? Because everyone deserves to feel like they matter, like they're more than just a resource to be optimized. I looked around the cafe, at the mix of customers from all walks of life. Victoria, do you think we're actually making a difference? I know we are, but Alex, I think the real question is, are we making a difference in the right way? What do you mean? I mean, are we just creating better working conditions for people who are already privileged? Or are we actually addressing the systemic issues that create these problems in the first place? It was a good question. The Chen Ventures Mental Health Initiative had helped thousands of employees at major tech companies. But what about the millions of people working in retail, food service, and other industries that couldn't afford comprehensive mental health programs? What do you think we should do? Victoria smiled. I think we should expand. Not just to more companies, but to more types of companies. Corner stores, fast food restaurants, cleaning services. Places where people are working just as hard but don't have the same resources. That would be a massive undertaking. So was building Chen Ventures. So was recovering from a mental health crisis. So was changing how an entire industry thinks about employee wellness. She had a point. Everything worthwhile was a massive undertaking. Victoria, I have a proposition for you. Another one? I want to spin off the Mental Health Initiative into its own company. With you as CEO. Victoria's eyes widened. Are you serious? Dead serious. You've built something incredible, and it's time for it to stand on its own. But I've never been a CEO before. Neither had I when I started Chen Ventures. The best leaders are the ones who care more about the mission than the title. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. What would you call it? I was thinking. Sterling Solutions. Sterling Solutions? Because you've taken your name back. You've turned it from something associated with corporate cruelty into something associated with corporate compassion. Victoria started crying again, but this time they were tears of joy. Alex, a year ago, I was living in my car, convinced that reality was fake. Now you're offering to make me a CEO? Victoria, a year ago, I was hiding behind a barista apron because I was afraid of the responsibility that came with power. Now I'm ready to use that power to change the world. Together? Together. We shook hands across the table, and I realized that this was the real victory. Not the viral videos, or the media attention, or the business success. The real victory was that two people who had started as enemies had become partners in something bigger than either of us could have accomplished alone. As we walked out of the cafe, Victoria turned to me one last time. Alex, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think we would have found our way to this point if we hadn't gone through all the drama? If I hadn't had my breakdown, if you hadn't been working as a barista, if none of the crazy stuff had happened? I thought about it. Honestly, I don't think so. Sometimes you have to break down before you can build up. Sometimes you have to lose yourself before you can find yourself. And sometimes, I said, you have to be willing to look like a fool before you can become wise. Victoria laughed. Well, in that case, we should be the wisest people in Silicon Valley. I'll drink to that. With coffee? With coffee. As we walked away from Grind Coffee, I realized that the barista who owned half of Silicon Valley wasn't just a story about hidden identity or corporate power. It was a story about second chances, about the possibility of redemption, and about the truth that everyone, no matter how successful or how broken, deserves to be seen as a complete human being. And sometimes, the most important business you can be in is the business of helping people remember their own humanity.